our next question is, how do you get your offer accepted when you're competing?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Starting kind of from the beginning, like price, most of the time is going to be the determining factor.
Mm-hmm.
Highest price usually will get the house. So that's something that you and your realtor have to go over, decide what that house is worth to you. As long as you're staying in a relatively, market value area, and as long as you're planning to stay there for at least 5 years. I mean, there's certain price points you just don't want to hit in certain areas or for certain houses, but your realtor should always help you and guide you to choose the right number, but only go as high as you're comfortable doing for that house. But there are lots of other things you can do to help make your offer more attractive.
So the next one would be your deposit. So that's a big one. If you are competing against a bunch of people, you don't want a small deposit. You don't want $1,000. Typically for like kind of from 200 to the 300 range, we see 5,000. But if you're in a competitive situation, it is good to give a higher deposit. So 10,000, 15, 20, depending on the price of the house. If you have like a larger home that you're purchasing or if possession's far away, then you'll want to do an even higher deposit. So that's something to consider as well. And it also, for a seller to see that, they're like, oh, they're pretty serious, and it helps hold the house as security. And
yeah, so deposit's a big one. It's not the most important thing on an offer, but it does make you look more secure.
Yeah.
The next thing would be conditions. So right now when it's super competitive, a lot of the time people will remove conditions. So if you want to have a financing condition, which you do if you're getting a mortgage, your lender's probably going to want you to have a financing condition. I don't like to remove financing conditions if my client needs a mortgage. There's a lot of risks associated with that. You could be stuck with a house if you can't get financing and lose your deposit. If something goes wrong, or if the house doesn't appraise and you don't have the cash to carry the difference.
To bridge the gap,
to bridge the gap. You could end up faulting on your contract, and the sellers can also take further legal action against you. So
it's not just the deposit, it's also legal fees and all of that. So there's a lot at risk. And then you could still lose the house as well. So it's a big loss. So if you need a mortgage, get a financing condition. If you are paying cash, then it's different. Or if you have quite a bit of equity that you're putting into it, then things change. But if you need a mortgage, if you need financing, get a financing condition.
And if you talk to your lender and they're like, you don't need to write one, like we're good, then that's awesome. But if you do need one, there are ways to get like a pretty short turnaround on financing conditions, like 24 hours. If your bank says that they need 7 business days, you probably want to find another lender, because you're just never going to get an offer accepted if you're competing with a timeline like that. Even if you're not competing, sometimes that can be too long. So.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why it's good to work with a mortgage broker as well, because they do work 24/7, whereas with certain banks it's 9 to 5. So if on weekends, if you're that. Even then. So it is nice to work with somebody who has a flexible schedule, who's able to do the work kind of more after hours. So that's kind of when we see the really good time, or the shorter timelines, is with mortgage brokers or mobile mortgage specialists through like a bank. So that's a big one. The next thing I would say is to, if you need an inspection, do a pre-inspection, or if you are okay with it and you feel that you feel good about the house, to remove the inspection entirely. So that's something we see often. You definitely don't have to. There are still competitive offers that win with inspections, but the less conditions and the less risk for the seller is better, and they'll appreciate that more.
And you can get a pre-inspection done. You're still gonna have to pay for it, but they're usually less expensive, like $250 instead of $450. So I mean, but you also have to get that done in the timeline that you decide, okay, I really like this house, and then the day of offers. So you're going to have to kind of book in an hour to go have a walkthrough with an inspector and that kind of stuff. So you just got to be prepared, and you have to be okay to invest, $300 to have that peace of mind before you even submit your offer.
Yeah, and it is a risk too because you might not even get the house, but still it's better than no inspection at all, just to give you a bit of a peace of mind. So then the next thing that we would say is that a lot of sellers have a possession date that they would like. So I think as a buyer, if you really want the house, you want to be really accommodating to them. So they're saying August 1st, go for August 1st. If
they're saying November 10th, go for November 10th. Even though it's so far away, that's what they want for some reason.
Yeah. So sometimes that makes a difference if you're like a couple grand off, if this, like, all the conditions are the same and then it's just between two possession dates, whatever is most in line with what they want is what they'll often go for.
And lastly, I'd say what can help make you have a very strong offer is writing a love letter to the sellers. Sometimes it literally doesn't matter and they won't even read it and they don't care and follow the money and who cares what they had to say in their letter and oh, cute picture, but I don't care. But sometimes
it does make a difference. It makes a huge difference.
I had one where my client was in the Army and they wrote a letter and the seller was a veteran. So we didn't have the highest price, but he chose us because, hey, that's who he wanted to have the house.
So that, it does definitely make a difference, especially like if a lot of people when they're selling their family home, they don't want to sell it to an investor. They're like, well, we love this house. We don't want it to just be a rental, or we don't want it to just be an Airbnb. So if you have that and you're like, here, like we're a family. We have 3 kids. We have a dog. We're so excited. We love the backyard. Like you love the backyard. That makes a difference because then they're more willing to give it to you and to want to pass it on to your family.
Even if you don't have the best price at the time, maybe they'll counter you so that you have the chance to get the house rather than the person with the higher offer, but they don't want the house to be, totally renovated and whatever. So that stuff can help sometimes, but not all. Like, you have to be okay with pouring your heart out into this letter and getting rejected. So
that's one thing. Brace yourself because it kind of hurts a little more. But those are probably our best tips for getting a really good competitive offer that will get you the house.